like and subscribe. Now, what is extremely rare, but people think it's very common? Successfully saving someone trapped by a fire via re-entering a burning building. The mortality rate for this is really high and fire departments have petitioned to stop showing this in movies because it usually results in another life being lost. Had a kitchen fire when I was a teenager, and after some moderate panicking trying to put it out with the sink, my mom and sister went outside and called the fire department, and I was like, oh yeah, there's an outside, and went and got the hose and put the fire out. The firefighters showed up and were like, you put out the fire. Nice job dude, but never go back inside. Ever. But nice job putting that fire out. Not even once. You understand me? It was a little weird. I didn't really know how to feel about it at the time, because it makes sense. Safety being more important than damaged property. But in this particular instance I never felt like I was in danger. But, presumably, other people who went back into burning buildings also felt like they weren't gonna die, but they did. Burglary in the middle of the night. Burglary happens most often during the day, when nobody is home. No burglar wants to break in and try to sneak around your place while you're sleeping. His biggest concern is to evade detection. It makes more sense to work in the daytime. In all likelihood, that noise you heard outside was a car or a coon or your imagination. Go to sleep. That's exactly what a burglar would say. Don't trust this person. People giving away drugs to kids at Halloween. Why would they give away product they could sell? My 12-year-old daughter told me that literally none of the kids in her grade will eat from the pizza place right by our house because the people making the pizza put weed in it. I figure 12 is old enough to learn that nobody is giving away weed. That's shame-free. Where is this pizza place I should most certainly avoid because of the weed in the pizza? This past Halloween, one of my FB friends put up the scare share warning parents to make sure that people haven't given your kids ecstasy in their bags. Ain't no damn body going to give a kid a $20 trick or treat gift or use. You almost never see two guys walking across the street carrying a big pane of glass. I was on a college visit once, and I saw two guys walking holding a big pane of glass. I took a good look, because I know it will never happen again. I once slipped on a banana peel. I took a moment to really absorb it, because I couldn't believe it had actually just happened. You didn't skateboard through it, you blew it. Dropping out of college and becoming a millionaire/billionaire. Most of those people drop out of Harvard, MIT, Oxford, Cambridge and others. They don't drop out of community college. Survivor's bias. And they don't drop out because they couldn't hack it. They drop out because it's a waste of time for them. Red hair. It only occurs in about 2% of the population. Dissociative identity disorder, multiple personalities. Also, a severe misunderstanding about what it actually is. A potential mate who is successful, smart, funny, attractive, mentally stable, ready for commitment and single, and attracted to you. Becoming a successful YouTuber. Mike Kawalker told me he was quitting his job to focus on his video gaming and streaming. I just wished him a hearty good luck. I'm actually surprised at how many people can make a living on YouTube. It is almost an alien concept for a person who grew up watching skateboard fails on Original It. If you could somehow get this into the heads of the 3 million 12-year-olds trying to do Minecraft on YouTube spamming everywhere, you'd be a hero. Rent-controlled apartments in New York City. Writing code that executes on first compile. 99 bugs in the code on my screen. 99 little bugs. Take one down. Figure it out. 130 little bugs in my code. Figure it out should be patched around. Being able to make it as a musician or actor or many other creative jobs. And by making it, I mean being able to earn some serious money or even just to make a living by just performing and not doing anything else. Most of the time, you will have to have multiple side projects that only roughly are related to actually performing. Or so I've heard. If there are people with personal experience in these fields, I'd love to read your comments. I have a friend that's an amazing songwriter. He has written with and for many famous bands and artists, lots of people you've heard on the radio. He has been nominated for a Grammy twice, once in the last year or two. He has to work side jobs to make ends meet in between royalty checks. There is just no money in music anymore. Unless you are Taylor Swift or Lady Gaga, even someone like him. That proves my point more than I would have thought. Thanks for sharing. There are only 13 advertising blimps in use around the world, yet it's so common to see them when there's a football game. Is there more than one Goodyear blimp? BC, I've seen that thing several times through my life, all throughout the country. I believe Goodyear operates too. Successfully resuscitating someone who has drowned. The movies tell me all I have to do is scream at them to wake up, and it works. Don't forget to pound on their chest, or alternately, whisper softly into their ear about how much you love them. I'd also like to add to this, successfully resuscitating someone whose heart has stopped. While doing scuba train we were told this, you are trained more for body retrieval than resuscitation. If the BBC has taught me anything, it would be murders in small British villages. My mum watched a show about two gardeners, Rosemary and Thyme, who traveled about gardening and going to flower shows, and there was always a murder they solved, and they'd always know more than the police. If two gardeners keep showing up around murders, they're the prime suspects. American here. Rosemary and Thyme was so over the top and ridiculous. When it was on Netflix, my friends and I would have viewing parties. What could be more British than to sassy ladies roaming around the UK, restoring gardens, and solving murders? Were the murderers parsley and sage the greater good? To be fair, those were all accidents. Crusty jugglers. Good old Midsomer murders. Epilepsy, being fall to the floor, spaz, uncontrollably froth and all that due to flashing lights. Epilepsy is recurring seizures, and there are lots and lots of seizure types, and often they aren't noticeable, even immediately so for the sufferer. Triggers for these seizures are more likely to be hyperventilation, stress, alcohol or sleep deprivation, or stuff like that, than strobe lights. Epilepsy is also pretty common, and it's likely you go to school or work with someone who has it. In a reverse of the title, ironically for this post though, the kind of epilepsy I have does have a stereotype. Go figure. My dad has severe epilepsy and I've seen him have seizures. Once we were at the movies, got out of the movie and the sudden brightness of daylight overloaded his senses and was too much. He froze in place with 1,000-yard stare on his face and dropped his expensive camera. We were on vacation, and I knew what was happening. I sat him down on a bench, and in a few minutes he was okay, but tired and confused. Pleading insanity to escape punishment for a crime. There was even a pretty so-so movie about it a while ago. In reality, it is very rare that insanity is used as a criminal defense strategy. Fewer than 1% of criminal cases in the US involve the insanity defense. Here's a PDF source for your perusal if you're not the type to trust some guy on the internet. Even then, it is only successful in 1 out of 4 attempts, and that involves convincing a psychiatrist that you're insane. So don't hang your hat on it if you're thinking about killing someone. Also, pleasing insanity doesn't get you off scot-free. It means you get placed in a psychiatric facility for an indefinite amount of time, until your doctors are satisfied that you are able to manage your condition without harming yourself or others. For many people, that could mean they never get out. For others, it means only a couple of years of therapy and finding the right medication, and most are released under conditions such as remaining in outpatient care, living with a caregiver, etc. Yes, it's supposed to be scot-free when not guilty is a life sentence. It's long, so here's a podcast version. If you are found to be guilty of murder and insane, you could spend 25 years in prison. But if you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, you could be confined to an institution for 587 years. Involuntary confinement in a state psychiatric hospital sometimes becomes a life sentence. Having green eyes. Only 1 to 2% of humans on Earth have green eyes. Been in Turkey many years ago. Never seen so many people with black as a night hair and green emerald eyes. 2% means 70 to 140 million people, and those millions probably live concentrated in select regions, so in those regions, green eyes feel more prevalent. I'm the only person I know with green eyes. Nobody in my family has them, and I've never met another naturally green-eyed person. Yes, it's very funny to insinuate that my mom cheated. I get it. A woman's water breaking during pregnancy. It only happens outside of the hospital like 15% of the time. But in the movies it's always the dramatic telling of when a baby is coming. Wow. I did not know this. When my boy was born they had to manually break the waters. That was like 6 hours after getting to the hospital and about 20 hours after the first mild contractions. My wife's water broke while she was getting ready for work one morning. Just as she was about to leave she thought she had peed herself, but it kept trickling. She put on a pad and dry cloths and went to the hospital out of caution. 15 hours later our son was born. Also, it's not always like a gush of water wetting your pants and the floor. My sister's water broke whilst she was peeing, and it felt like a normal pee to her. And adding to this, just because the water breaks does not mean the baby is going come shooting out in the next few minutes. You've got time. Hollywood just makes it ridiculous. Update: I get that no one wants to watch 6 hours of labor in a movie, but there's nothing wrong with a realistic portrayal instead of OMG. The baby is coming now followed 2 minutes later by pulling out the baby. If it were my movie, I'd show it the way it usually goes and edit down to something appropriate for the movie. Exactly. Movies act like it's suddenly a baby water slide. That woman's got hours of agony left before that baby is out. No need to rush. This drives me crazy. Me. 911. Someone else. My wife's water broke, send the ambulance now, the baby is coming, panic screeching sounds while ignoring my questions like where the F they are every FI time. Big dicks at work right now, so I'm not googling the stats. But if you've ever had the pleasure of perusing through the Craigslist personals, you should. It's gold. There are a ton of women wanting a guy with at least a 9 schlong. 9 inches must be larger than 90% of pornsters. That's your bottom limit. You have no idea how rare a dick over 9 inches long is. 2 former coworkers, women, once claimed that they believe 8 inches was the average dick size. They are setting themselves up for a life of disappointment. It's okay. All the average guys are gonna call themselves 8 inches to them anyway. I knew a girl in college who said she thought the average was 9 inches cause that's what each of her boyfriends had. I think it was dubbed as Allison's average. Generally accepted average is 5.17 inches, 0.65 inches. So 9 inches is 5.9 standard deviations above normal. Height, US male, is 70 inches 3 inches. So that's exactly as rare as an American man who's 87.7 inch tall. 4 inches, 2.23 meters, or bigger / taller than 99.9999995% of the population. Watching porn and saying I want a guy with a 9-inch dick is like watching basketball and saying I want a guy who's 7 feet 4. I think they do that knowing that someone will claim to be 9 inches while really being in the realm of 6 inches. If they start off realistically, someone is going to try and pass off a 4-inch dick as 6 inches. Just my guess on the thought process behind that. Jesus. It's like salary negotiations. I believe a legit 7-inch penis is like the 95th percentile, and usually anything over 6 just hits the cervix anyway, which I heard is painful as F. Only about 1% of men have a penis larger than 8 inches, so this is correct. Here's the wiki on that. Reason people think it is so common is due to both men and women over-exaggerating. A 6-inch penis suddenly becomes an 8-inch, and unless you're taking a ruler to it before 6, people are just more inclined to believe hitting a jackpot. That's why casinos exist and are hugely profitable. Hell, late last year in my city a woman won $1.2 million just on a VLT at a local bar. Great for her, but you know it lead to an increase in people burning through their paychecks on those machines. The epitome of this logic for me was in 2015, when some genius came up with the idea of making the Powerball harder to win, because it would result in much larger jackpots. Granted, your odds became even more abysmal, but look at that giant number on the billboard and someone's got to win it right. And that was a resounding success, if I remember correctly. Cow tipping. Everyone knows some kid who claims to have gone out into the countryside and pushed a cow over for a laugh. Know how many people have actually tipped a cow? None. It's a bloody great big beast, and it isn't going to let you shunt it. With the amount of cow tipping stories that exist, you'd think there'd be more video evidence of it occurring, but it's just a lie city kids tell their mates. Quicksand. Using stop, drop and roll. Exactly. But when you were in grade school, the amount of times that you had a fire safety demonstration that brought this up, You'd think catching on fire was like a normal thing. If only that idiot with the skateboard who soaked his pants in gasoline and then lit them on fire hadn't missed those 25 separate demonstrations in grade school. Yeah, point. I don't think it's a good idea to drop and roll in quicksand. Actually, one of the best ways to get out of quicksand is in fact to drop/lay down. You want to distribute your weight over as large an area as possible to increase your buoyancy and stop sinking. The rolling part is less optimal, though you want to stay face up during this process. Wasabi, you can only really find the real stuff in Japan, and even there it's really rare. I had a friend who thought wasabi was just the Japanese word for horseradish. The Japanese word for horseradishes, or western wasabi. Shark attacks. I live in Perth, supposedly one of the shark attack capitals of the world. Sure, we see them occasionally, but actual attacks are very rare. I live in the other Perth and shark attacks are even rarer. Which other Perth? There are 9 places named Perth in America. There are 2 places named Perth in Australia. There is 1 place named Perth in South Africa. There is 1 place named Perth in Jamaica. There is 1 place named Perth in Guyana. There is 1 place named Perth in United Kingdom. Being in an airplane crash, it's 1 in a million, but a lot of people I know are still more scared to travel on a plane than in a car. Australian here. Know a guy so petrified of flying he elected to drive from the northernmost point of Australia to the southernmost point, then drive his car onto a boat which shipped him to Tasmania, then all the way back again. All told, this was about a 10,000 kilometer trip. They had other stops up the east coast. I'm not an expert, but I figure weighing up the 10,000 kilometers through outback Australia combined with major city CBDs on the way to the destination and the risk of death or serious injury, I can only imagine would be much higher than just flying for a few hours. Wow, I'd say death of boredom is greatly increased as well. I used to make the trip from Victoria to Queensland by car every year, and going through country NSW has to be the most boring thing I have ever done. ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation after CPR. I believe the actual success rate is 3%, and those people are very likely to have brain damage. Media would have you thinking it's a great catch-all for any unconscious person. Here's the thing though, a lot of times the CPR isn't what gets them circulating on their own again. What it does, however, is maintain blood flow, so that by the time they get the treatment, that will get them pumping again. They are less likely to have brain damage. Yes, the success rate is low, even lower if it's performed poorly, but even 3% is better than 0%. The MBTA cop that got shot in the gunfight with the Boston bombers supposedly went through a ton of blood as EMTs kept him on 4th and constant CPR till they got him to the hospital. Somehow he woke up with remarkably little issues besides some nerve damage in his leg and total memory loss from that night. I never heard if he had any lingering effects though. I'm gonna go with T-Rex fossils. I at least thought they were rather common. Since my local museum had like 3, there are something like only 2-4 dozen ever found in the world, and only about 12 skulls. Interesting. It always seemed like there was a good amount discovered. Well, I mean, on an archaeological level, a dozen complete skeletons is quite a lot. Amusement ride incidents. You are more safe on the ride than driving to the park itself. The vast majority of incidents that occur are because of rider misconduct. Follow the rules. Trust the operators, and you'll be fine. Based on movies, I'd say architects. Every professional worker in movies is an architect who goes to work every day with rolled up drawings hoping they're ready for the big presentation that will make or break their career. If the movies were real, about 30% of my friends and relatives would work for local cable news. The female version of this is journalist at a magazine or art gallery curator. Art gallery curator. Ah yes, she'll walk up behind you while you're staring at a piece and comment on how this painting means something while not making any eye contact with you. If you manage to offer your own correct interpretation of the painting, that means you've found true love. Found Ted Mosby. Ted Mosby, sex architect. Autistic people being geniuses or savants. I work as a behavior therapist for autistic children. Many people seem to think that autism means a child is only socially awkward, but incredibly book smart. The huge majority of the clients I work with are far behind in cognitive development, which leads to them being far behind in education and related areas like reading and basic math. In high school we took a group of autistic children to the movies as chaperones. Great kids. But the one I was hanging out with could do almost nothing school related, but could name every different form of Kirby, which episode and games each version appears in, as well as enemies. Pretty impressive. But he could only focus on / remember one thing, Kirby. I guess for the average person though, without personal experience through work, or in their family, they are only going to encounter people with autism who function well enough. It's like Down syndrome like that. People tend to only be exposed to those way up on the spectrum of social ability, so they only see those ones. They have no idea how utterly debilitating and life-ruining these things can be. Getting killed by a serial killer who comes out with a mask and a knife every Halloween night. How would he have the time to kill that many teenagers? Can confirm it is rare. It only ever happened to me once. How's the whiffy in the afterlife? The fit guy laughing at the fat newbie at the gym. When I was fat getting into shape, I got nothing but positive reinforcement from these guys to never give up and keep going. My fat friends were paranoid people and assumed people were laughing at them. In reality, gym goers were just being social and laughing about their conversations. From my experience at the gym, usually people don't really give a sh what you're doing or what your body type is, unless you're either being a dick or being dumb. I don't give a sh if you're fat, thin, tall, or short. Just re-rack your weights and don't sit texting on a machine you are done using and you're now tied with everyone else. For my favorite person in the gym, laughing at a fat person at a gym is like laughing at an injured person at a hospital, so I should stop laughing at people at the hospital. Noted. People poisoning or putting razors in candy on Halloween. Snopes did a great debunking of this, but there are still so many people out there that think it is a common thing. Creating a successful business in a person's garage or basement. It's a big American myth that most successful businesses were a labor of love built after work with nothing but sweat and determination, especially regarding tech. In reality, most were made in an office setting and simply had a better marketing strategy compared to their peers. Also, don't underestimate the ability to acquire startup capital. You can have a vision, but without the funding, it ain't happening. Astronomer here. Total solar eclipses. Hear me out. Obviously, we know that they're not common at any given point on Earth, but you'll have about one a year somewhere on the planet, so it's not unreasonable to see one if you plan a little. But with that context, it turns out our moon is the only moon we know of that is the exact same size of the sun in our sky. Mars's moons, for example, are captured asteroids too puny to cover the sun's disk, and the further out you go the planet's moons are so big it more than covers the tiny size of the disk. So, with that, 100% of total solar eclipses, where you actually get the sun obscured and see the corona and all that jazz, happens on Earth. And this effect won't happen forever either, because the moon is moving away from us a few inches a year. In a few 100 million years no one will see total solar eclipses anymore. My dream is that one day, Earth will be a galactic tourist hotspot. Because of this, I'm fairly certain that the Earth is going to be demolished to make way for the new hyperspace express route. I've seen the plans. They are on display.